Hello, everyone. My name is Anton Grishko, and I am Chief Architect at prophecylabs.com. And today I'm glad to be here on this webinar with a super good speaker. And I want to introduce him to you. Semih Duru, a Senior Specialist Solution Architect at AWS, and today with a great topic about migrating to the AWS. Welcome.
Thanks, Anton. Hi, everyone.
And before we will begin, I just want to add a few notes. First of all, please be active at the end of the session on the Q&A, because we have a couple of the prize draw at the end of Q&A. So please be active at Q&A, and the 5 best questions will get prizes from us. So that's what I want to say. Okay, thank you. I'm starting the share. The stage is yours.
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
I was able and not.
Let's do that again. Yeah, how about now?
Yes, it's working.
Okay, perfect. First of all, thanks everyone again for attending session, and for anyone who will listen this session later. As Anton introduced, I am Semih. I'm the Senior Specialist SA in AWS, looking after the migrations and modernization topics. So as part of my role, I engage with the customers to help their migrations journey. And after that, even one of the most common questions, even after the migrations, what is next? What is the next step? So this is where the modernization comes. So today I will cover both topics. I will explain you the journey from 2 different perspectives. And at the end, hopefully we will get a better understanding how you can accelerate your migrations and modernization. So let's kick it off. So today's session, the topics are pretty wide. So I will try to cover from very different angles and as much as information I can give. But if any missing areas, that please ask your questions, and we will try to answer those at the end as well. So we will start with the migrations overview, how we define the migrations, what is the business criteria for you, what is the framework that we use in AWS, and later I will dive deep in a bit more assessment and discover phase. This phase is extremely important for any migrations project or later the modernization as well. And then we will discuss about the pathways, what kind of approach that you can choose for your migrations or modernization journey, and we will finalize with the key takeaways. So let's start with the most obvious question, right? Why migrate? For anyone who is listening at the moment or later, that there are different reasons that you may be choosing to migrate to AWS as well. From what we see from our customers, there are different business drivers. For example, one of course, the biggest business drivers, most of the customers are going into big digital transformation programs, or they may be trying to be more agile and increase their productivity. Of course, one of the biggest conversation openers, or even for any migrations project, is the cost reduction. So how they can utilize AWS to reduce their costs or improve their operational resilience, scalability, and the security as well. On the other side, especially probably the startups, they are looking for how they can go global quickly rather than dealing with the same level of activities to scale through the global site. Or big enterprises as well, AI, ML, adding these capabilities or IoT capabilities, their applications characteristics. This is one of the, especially in the AI ML is a growing area for any customers. Or simply data center consolidation or outsourcing your end-of-life hardware and software as well. So, and most of the time, we see multiple of those drivers are coming to any of your business case. So let's have a look at the benefits. This is the external report as well that's been done based on the thousands of migrations. On average, what we see that more than 30% infrastructure cost savings. Of course, with the automations and the new capabilities, maybe this is more even important, like the improved security incidents or the improving staff productivity. And with all the automation and the digital capabilities, what we saw is multiplying the features development for your applications. So benefits are there, but there is a bit path to gain those benefits. So let me talk about my favorite slide. This is probably from my perspective, the most important slide, explaining the approach and the importance of the framework that you can take. So what we see, once you move into AWS, your costs are going to be eventually going down, or the benefits that we saw that earlier, that you are going to get the benefits. So this is the nice area to talk about. But till you reach to this level, you still need to pass this, what we call is the migration model. So what I mean with that, during your migrations, you are going to run duplicate environments, maybe staff training or migration consulting or just the tooling implementation and so on. So what this bubble increases basically for your migration projects. And my role, for example, in AWS is to help the customers to squeeze this bubble as much as possible so we can pass this path quickly, and we can discuss about the modernization opportunities or what else we can add as the business goals into the customers. So for everything we will do as the framework implementation that I will share with you is literally to how we can squeeze that one and reach to this area as soon as possible. So let's have a look at what are the common questions that you need to ask as if you are starting your journey for your migrations. So I listed very few questions that I am hearing all the times once I engage with the customers, like if you're not clear about your infrastructure, what do I have in my environment? What am I going to migrate? Or if the decisions are not yet clear, or if you don't have the business case, how to create a business case? Then you start questioning, like, well, what should I migrate at all? Or should I migrate or modernize? How can I start? And probably most important question later, is my organization ready for the cloud? So for these questions, all valid questions, all very strong questions, and you shouldn't be ignoring any of those questions, by the way. And this is why we built a framework for our customers, and based on the thousands of migrations we have been going through as AWS. let me share those frameworks with you. So in our migration and modernization framework, we have 3 phases. At the beginning, in the assess phase, as said, we will go in a bit more detail here as well today, that we want to understand what do you have, what is the your current costs on your infrastructure. What we do also migration readiness assessment. So is your own organization ready? I will dive deep in a bit more in the next slide on this one to ask the right questions at the beginning, so you don't hit the wall once you move into migration phase. We focus on the really educating the right stakeholders and immersion days to really help to understanding of the cloud. I know that the teams have their own pace to learn and to increase their capabilities. So this is the area that to understand that where your company is. And then with all these findings, we go into mobilize phase. So you will see that in the mobilize phase, different categories we have. And this phase, basically, we want to build the foundations. So if you remember the migration bubble, we don't want to jump into migrations without really understanding what are the business blockers you have. Because I saw customers where simply finance approval was just blocking the whole migration. So think about it, just one single, let's say, decision was blocking the migration and your bubble is extending because of those, maybe you could have overcome quickly at the beginning. So at the mobilize phase, we go through the migration plan, what are the planning activities, creating a business case, and then probably more important is the gaining the experience. For example, if you or your teams are not yet capable of the migrations tools, for example, this is the area that we want to explore those tools and understand before going into the large-scale migrations. And a couple of foundations, of course, the landing zone building. Once you set the landing zone correctly, you can ensure that your life is going to be much easier afterwards. And security compliance, operating models, probably those are from my experience as well, the areas that normally take a bit longer to align at the beginning. But once again, you set those things, you can ensure set yourself for the success for the migration phase. And building the experience, the skill set, and all the necessary the plannings in place, you can then move into migration phase. In this phase, because you set all the foundations, you can go in the large at scale migrations. I know that the customers like from small migrations or the big enterprises that they can go at scale once they set up this mobilized phase properly. And of course, this is a never-ending stage. So once you move into the cloud, the next stage is that how we can look for optimize, how we can reduce the costs further, how we can go into modernization phase after this point. So with all of these features, we are basically trying to ensure that you move into cloud, not just moving the workload, but you can work at the cloud effectively. And all these building capabilities, trainings, improving or changing your operating model is aiming to that you can be successful at the cloud. So with saying that, let me explain you what we do at the migration readiness assessment and what it is. So this is something we approach into 6 different pillars from the business perspective, people, governance, and on the technical side, the platform, security, and operations. And this is why that cloud migrations are not just moving to cloud, but it's a full transformation journey that you can change and improve your company to operate better in the cloud. So in this migration readiness assessment workshop is normally taking 1 day in the virtual times. In the pandemic times, we were doing it in the virtually as well. It is more about aligning the leadership teams. It's more about understanding your capabilities. And once we understand that, we can build the right plan. So if you again remember all this framework and the bubble, we want to ask the right questions at the beginning, so we don't hit the wall or we delay our migrations in the middle. And it is basically this assessment workshop will consist of around 80 questions spread across those 6 different pillars. And this is more about the understanding from your perspective. We are not answering, you are answering yourself. And in this way, you can basically align with the other teams. And those questions, normally I can say that they are there for a reason. We are continuously updating those question database. So we are sharing the best practices from our learnings, lessons learned from globally from the other customer engagements as well. So we're sharing with you that ask those questions, don't forget before moving into the cloud. So I put the link here down as well. We can share in the chat later. There is a prescriptive guidance to go in a bit more detail on this as well. You can run this through your partner or with your AWS account team. So, and you can just read yourself as well in order to understand better how this migration assessment works. So let's ask another question. Why do you need discovery? Why it is important, or why I put a specific section or question to you. So the next couple of slides are, I will say, one of the most important steps for any migration or modernization project, because it will give you a lot of data to plan properly for your journey. So the first thing, actually, what you're looking is what is in your data center. So in the details, basically, your applications might have developed maybe years ago. You may not have that information. In fact, this is a very pretty common business case. Probably you can remember the applications once I told developed years ago. Developers left the company, no documentation, no one wants to touch those applications. So you need to understand what are those applications, what are the details of those applications before moving into the cloud. And once you do this assessment, what is in your cloud, this is the standard kind of utilization levels that we see around. So most of the time, I worked in my previous life as well, the planning on the capacity levels as well. We are all the time planning based on the peak level. So most of the time, what we see, your compute capacity is underutilized or defined as part of your peak levels. And this is basically how the overall cloud initially triggered by the Amazon as well. In Amazon, there are prime days where the customer usage goes to the moon, and then it goes down after the prime days. So we need a bit more scalable infrastructure. And if you do it for on-prem, this is normally what we see, idle capacity versus the used capacity. So what kind of information you can collect in order to understand your application scale, what are your what is in your data center. So on the portfolio level, we normally on the technical side, 4 different categories. On the application level, what we want to understand is what is the application stack? Is the Java application, .NET application, Go, Python? What is the infrastructure? Who owns that application? Do you know that? Maybe I'm most of the time finding the application with no ownership as well. Criticality of that application. Well, what happens if we turn down that server? What would be the impact of your business? On the server level, OS version, utilization, CPU, RAM disks, so you can fine-tune and understand what are the limitations you have. Network type, yeah, especially big enterprises. In my previous life, I was also on the networking side as well. That's what are the firewall or networking connections, firewall changes you need to make while moving to cloud as well. And finally, storage database, what kind of storage you have. So normally you may be using maybe CMDB or manual documentation. They may not be updated all the time. So what is the recommendation here is what we call it, use the good data. So how are you going to collect the good data? Is of course, through the tools. In AWS, we have tools for every stage for your migration journey. For example, Application Discovery Service can help you understand all of those questions or some of those help with you. Or with the planning side, Migration Portfolio Assessment tool, or just on the workload migration, you can use the database migrations AWS DMS or AWS Application Migration Service for the actual migrating the workloads. And of course, what we call is use the right tool for the right job. You are not limited with using just AWS tools. There are pretty much very capable partner tools as well. You can use those as well. I put the list of the partner tools available. It is more important to understand that why you are using that tool and what is the value for you rather than the which tool conversation. But for the list of overview, this is a kind of snapshot of you can utilize on the different purposes. So once you understand your data, once you plan the overall landscape, let's go into the next question. How you are gonna determine the migration and the modernization path. So I talked about this earlier. This is where we go into deep level details in the mobilized space. So we understand the discovery, we went through we implemented our tools, we take the data, we are good, we have the right data. Now it is time for planning. It's time to building the migration plan and also updating our business case as well. So the question is, what are the priorities where you can start, right? For that, we have 3 different areas, factors you can look for deciding which application you can start or prioritization. If you have 2-3 applications for small companies, yes, it's maybe slightly simpler approach. But think about if you have thousands of applications, the huge enterprise, or even the hundreds of applications, but complex environments. So how are you going to build this prioritization map? So 3 different angles you can look. Mainly on the business side, what we recommend is to understand what is the application's user base. For example, if it is an application touching base to 2 million users versus preventive users. So in this case, starting with the simple approach till you gain the understanding or the experience on the migration will lower your risks. Of course, the complexity, the second thing, if you have an incredibly complex architecture for some application, maybe it's better to leave it to the later stages till you have a good understanding how you're gonna move the applications from your own premises to AWS. And of course, probably very no-brainer decision is all the time we prefer to go start with the development test environments rather than the production. I've been in some customer workshops that they have to move to their production first because of the regulatory reasons, because of their data center exit times. So for those, this planning is becoming even more important to reduce those risks. So this is the simple view, but from it's more interesting part, you have more different angles like the scalability or agility, or what are the change effort required. If you have a very complex change management process, maybe it's better to choose the low effort, let's say low hanging fruits first to start and gain the confidence and the experience for that. And so we discuss about the regulatory requirements as well, but there are multiple angles and it's changing based on the company and your environment. So it's really an important step to do this planning beforehand till you move into migration phase. So let's have a look on our migration strategies. For the ones that who has been through the migrations could have seen these the different R's, which is the 7R assessments. So you may have the option like the retain as well. You maybe some applications need to stay in the on-prem, not moving. Maybe there are applications you just decommission them there, you're not using anymore. Or you can simply use the relocate. For example, if you are using the VMware, you can use the VMware cloud on AWS as well. So you really don't need to change anything on AWS side. The easy part is most of the time the starting part is the rehosting, as known as the lift and shift migrations. And if after that you can talk about the replatforming, like the moving your applications to containers or refactoring them. So there are different levels of the decisions you can make. So let's have a look, ask another question, and how you are going to decide which path, which strategy is right for your application. So let me show you the quite popular parameters and trade-offs for each option. So you will see that the more you go down the refactoring level, the complexity is increasing. Of course, retire is the easiest. Just shut down, and this is the best way of adding value to your company. But you will see that the time of the migration and the cost to migrate is increasing with the refactor level. But of course, your agility and the cost to operate is also improving as well. So there's a clear trade-offs between each option. Let me ask another question now, how you are going to ensure that which approach is better for you. Let me show you a typical enterprise portfolio. So in general, there are three categories we see. Those are the numbers, not including the exceptions. There are some incredibly complex applications that may grow into all different categories. But one thing that I want to highlight is In the growth category, the applications are high rate of change, where you need to make the amendments of the application code frequently. So those are maybe customer-facing applications, and on the optimized tier, the changes are low. Maybe ERP systems, maybe legacy applications that maybe you are changing them a couple of times a year. And sustain, no change at all. So for this kind of applications, you can see the pattern here, change. Change means that I need to be more agile for some applications, and I don't need that agility for others. So for the applications that you need to improve your speed, requires refactor. This is the most value that you add, as we saw on the things. If you build your application with the cloud native capabilities, you can gain agility. And of course, going into changing the technology is not enough. You also need to change your operating model as well. Refactoring your application, let's say moving to microservices, but staying in the siloed approach still, you are not going to gain the value. So they need to fit together. And of course, for the optimized phase, maybe you can just go to the containers to reduce your costs. And for the sustain, you can even choose the software as a service solutions, or retire or rehost the application as well. And the starting point, I put the kind of percentage portfolio as well. So you can decide that which applications goes into which category. And I talk about operating model, and this is how normally it happens. So with traditional ops, you have the development team separate than your operations and platform teams. On the optimized side, like if you move to containers, maybe cloud platform engineer can look after the container infrastructure level, and then applications level can merge with operations as well. And of course, in the DevOps part, where you move into microservices, for example, you go into DevOps option, then everyone is taking care of the full stack lifecycle. And instead, another view, actually, your decision for your what kind of strategy you are going to choose for your applications needs to touch with your operations model. So this is why going hand in hand, if your operating model is not yet DevOps, and these are basically most of the time going in parallel. You may have DevOps teams, and it's better for those DevOps teams' responsibility area applications to refactor and go into microservices. But you may, in the separate, there might be the different teams, just lift and shift would be enough for them. So understanding where you are, this is why coming back to the assessment will help you to make these decisions once you go into the deep planning phase. So now, let me take the second half of the modernization part, because I want to discuss what is the next step, what is the modernization part. Before when I was speaking about the modernization, I was giving the definition of the modernization. I stopped doing that because everyone has their own different modernization definition. So let me give you instead the pillars of the modernization. So we talk about the technology, the modern architectures, like microservices, event-driven architectures, and containers, anything. What we want is basically independent business functions can make those decisions. On the people, process, and culture-wise, it is more about the teams rather than defining with their responsibility areas, let's say silos. They are moving into more creating the value. So DevOps teams or the processes is a good example of those. And of course, if you don't implement the right governance and operations, you are not going to achieve the values of any modernization, like automation, like creating the self-service enablements. for your applications. And let's have a look at this typical journey. This is important because we are asking again another question. So your modernization journey is going to be different, depends on where you are. Today, if you are in the on-premises, you are in the first category. And what you need to do is, as I explained earlier, assessment and plan. How you're going to move to the cloud, are you ready? All the questions and discussions we covered so far. And once you're in the cloud, this is something that your teams and capabilities already started moving. At this stage, you want to introduce change in your organization. And that change is not a small change. As I mentioned, it's all including the operating model. It is including the processes. So it's a big change, cultural change. So for this category, you need to, what we suggest, select few applications. And then prove the value of the modernization. And once you prove the value, gain the confidence, you can then scale this through your wider portfolio. And eventually, you can go into completion of the initial transformation and continue the journey. And even if you are in this category, the modernization is a journey. It is a muscle that we want all of our customers build actually, because today's modern applications is tomorrow's legacy. So that's a moving part. Even today's cloud native customers going into modernization programs, because they're born in the cloud, they are native, but in a few years time, AWS is growing. There are new services, new technologies come. So they also need to want to change and modernize. So the key question and key message here is build the muscle for your organization, modernization muscle. So how are we going to build that? Again, the same approach. You will see the pattern every time here. The assess, identify the opportunities. Let's select the right opportunities for you to start the pilot program. So you may be asking, how am I going to select my opportunities, the customers, the applications? So there are a couple of reasons, and this is important decision because what we see, for example, you may have the old technology, like remember the application developed years ago, no support, no owner, no documentation. You may, and if it is touching base your business goals, you may want to change that. You don't want to stay there because if you need to change it, no documentation, it's going to harm your business. Maybe lack of skill set or lost knowledge. Maybe there are too many bugs in the application. So those are the couple of examples from technical reasons. On the business side, maybe you want to be more competitive on the market. You want to propose a new service on the market differentiators, or the customer-facing application needs to be updated much faster. So you need to modernize your application. Maybe you need to change your overall architecture to event-driven architectures or microservices. So defining your reasons, business value is the most important step. And remember that in our first goal is to prove the whole organization that modernization adds value to your company. And for that, you need to be very clear about why you are doing the modernization. So once you make this clear for yourself, the rest is focusing on the repeatable patterns. What I mean with that, this is the migration. You have the legacy on-prem applications. You can just go into the rehost to the cloud and lift and shift approach. And after that, this is the pattern that we want you to build. Like identify the applications, for example, which ones can go into cloud native architecture, or which one can go to managed databases or open source. So once you identify those patterns in your application portfolio, this is the where you can start planning your modernization. Let me give you a bit more deep dive example on this to make it clear. So let's say that you have a Java Tomcat application on the source. One of the modernization pathway for you could be containers. And it needs to be very clear why you are moving to containers. Then you can modernize your database. You can move to RDS Aurora to increase the availability. And of course, you can implement the DevOps approach as well to optimize your operations or deployment pipeline. So all these different pathways basically can be repeatable. So if you do this moving to managed containers pathway for this application as the pilot, with those learnings, you can implement for maybe another 100 applications. But learning that capability, understanding what are the drawbacks or your gaps in your organization as part of the pilot process is going to help you to scale at the next level. So this is an example report. It's done by the third-party company to as a kind of from the many customer use cases in the past. So you can see that if customers adopt multiple pathways, they gain big benefits at the end. So it's the increase in organization revenue. So they are very powerful, and so once you implement those, you can increase and prove that value of the modernization. So the next is how you are going to do the pilot. Yeah, you select it, you are clear about your application, the modernization criteria, you understood the KPIs that you want to achieve, you selected your pathway, let's say containers or microservices. How are you going to introduce it in your organization? Because of the big changes, you need to do something, right? I will share with you how we are approaching this in AWS. So in AWS, we use this framework, experience-based acceleration. It's a methodology. It is a workshop. It's like the hackathon, if you think through. And it is aimed to bring the people together, address the blockers and so on. Remember, our goal at the pilot phase is not to deliver something. It is to learn as an organization. It's to improve our capabilities, understand what is missing. And for this, we need sponsorship because we need to bring multiple teams together. You can't achieve this level of modernization program with under one team or a couple of developers. You need the security teams, operations teams, developers, everyone in that room. And if we create a safe environment to make the decisions, right or wrong, to also to guide them, we achieve basically with the focus on that drive those decisions in few days, very targeted few days, and learn by doing. It's not the workshop in a sandbox environment. We focus on choose one application, those 5 pilot applications, bring them, and let's do it as a whole organization in a full day workshop. Normally it takes 3 days. And let me show you typical EBA room. So you can see multiple teams here. It's a big workshop. And then let me show you who are those people from the platform teams, from the application teams, security, center of excellence. So you can see that lots of people come to here with the one focus. What is the modernization pathway? Like moving to microservices, moving to containers, anything you define. and with the same approach, and making the decisions on the go. There's no sending emails or raising the change request to be responded in the next couple of weeks. So these are the things or interactions happening inside this room, and we empower the people to make the decisions. So with your organization, with your customers, creating this kind of environment will extremely accelerate your migrations or modernization journey. And finally, what are you going to do afterwards? You implemented your pilot program, you test it out, you prove the value. And this is where basically we are coming into, you're now into 3 or the 4th level. This is something that you need to scale. You need to be the champion of the modernization. So you can implement those learnings into the wider teams, wider organizations, and you will see that the cycle started running up, and you will continue building this muscle. And finally, I think let me do this key takeaways from what we learned here. So biggest message, it's the journey. Don't take it as a one-time activity. It's an ongoing activity. Today's, we are talking about different modern architectures. Tomorrow it's going to be different. So, but understanding this approach and enabling in your customers, in your company, it is going to be very impactful. And it's iterative. Don't try to be perfect. You are learning, remember, you are learning as an organization. It's not about the technology. In fact, most of the time, it is not about the technology. It's more about how you are integrating this the culture, modernization culture inside your companies. I can't iterate the third one more. Exec sponsor is a must. If you want to bring that many people in that room, it is the you need an exec sponsor. You need to go to the C levels. You need to go to the director levels. You need to explain them. You need to gain their buy-in before moving into the technical teams. Everyone is busy. All the teams are going to be busy. So you need some support on the higher end. And the last one is the tools and the frameworks. I gave few tools today, but there are lots of tools available for you to automate your processes and to utilize them. The frameworks like the existing frameworks documentation can help your journey a lot much faster. So with saying that, I think I can first of all thanks a lot for the ones who have been patient enough to follow up to this phase, or we can take any questions after this.
Yeah, thank you so much for this beautiful presentation and for your information. And before we'll go to the questions, actually people can already start writing the questions. I just want to use this opportunity and to mention that while we're speaking about the migrations, we at Prophecy are an AWS partner with the migration expertise. So if you have any kind of migrations, any complexity, just ping us. We're always welcome. Okay, and now let's go to the questions. But before going to the questions, Semih, can I ask you to stop sharing? I will share one slide.
Yeah, sure.
I want to explain what kind of price do we have today. The questions. Okay, so please start writing your questions in Q&A section. Today we have beautiful FinOps, Cloud FinOps book. It's ebook, and we have 5 of them, and we will give those 5 books for 5 best questions. Okay, I will be reading the questions. So the first question is asked by Andrei. How can Amazon AWS help with choosing an application migration partner for my company, SMB, not enterprise?
Yeah, so for the partner selection criteria, I guess the one of the things is, as Anton mentioned, that we have the migration competency partner list available, and this is where we basically ensure that the partners have the right skill set and the experience for your company. Andre, I guess for the partner selection, what I normally see that if you are already working with the partner, and normally most of the times there is a already conversation, but on the other side we have the list of the partners, and also I think Anton also proposed as well. The professor is also part of our partner competent partner list as well. But probably for any detailed conversation, it would be good for us to take away with you as well to understand.
Okay, thank you so much. Next question. Thank you for your presentation. What do you think about AWS Migration Acceleration Program, MAP? In what cases can this program be used?
Yeah, so Migration Acceleration Program, if you think about, all the frameworks that I showed to you earlier, the migration framework, it's part of the Migration Acceleration Program, in fact. So for any customers moving to migration map, let's say, that's what we recommend also the partners and also the customers to follow the similar framework that I explained earlier. In fact, Migration Acceleration Program has some also commercial benefits for your workloads as well. Like it can give you the credits back, and if you think about the why those incentives are proposed in the Migration Acceleration Program, basically to reduce that migration bubble as well. So as AWS, we are helping to help you to squeeze that bubble, so you sharing your also the additional costs as well. I guess for the partners as well, the Migration Acceleration Program has different incentives as well that we love working with our partners. They accelerate your migrations a lot to work in different levels. So on the mobilized phase as well, it has incentives.
All right, thank you. Okay, let me check if we have any other questions. Yeah, this one done. And yeah, thank you. No other questions. Anyone? Any questions? If you have any questions, you have the probably last opportunity.
By the way, any questions, anything, I shared my LinkedIn profile as well. Probably anyone can approach me as well. Happy to answer any follow-up questions as well afterwards.
Okay, good. I will just ask for Sergey and Andrei, for people who ask the questions, please send your email address. Yeah, send your email address in the chat, and we will send you the FinOps book, the Cloud FinOps book. Okay.
And Anton, maybe I can also
yeah, you can share. Yeah, if you
share my screen as well for the final ask for the people who joined. It is the important one for me as well. Feedback time. So everything feedback is extremely helpful for us to understand also that's how we can improve, or how was your experience. So for anyone who can provide the feedback, that would be really helpful for me as well. And we can maybe share in the chat for any
It's already shared. It's in the chat. Yes, people, you have a link to the feedback in the chat. So please take a moment, drink some coffee, and fill that feedback. Will be very appreciated if you will do that. Yeah. Okay. So we can wrap up. Thank you very much for today's session, Semih. Thank you very much for this like beautiful presentation, a lot of useful information. And it was glad to see you here.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.